What?
Welcome in. Hello. It's been a while, Steph.
I know, we're rusty.
We were together.
Go ahead, Zach.
And maybe it's just because we're both tilting various NFL bets, lineups, season-long teams. It's been a rough early window in the NFL, at least for us too. And so carrying over some of that, some of those choppy waves into the intro here, but smooth sailing for the next hour. This is your Sunday edition of NBA Live, presented by Superdraft Daily Fantasy. My name is Zach Graham, a.k.a. Kawhisenberg DFS, alongside my good buddy, my long-lost buddy. I've been taking a long nap on the couch. Stefano Vaccarino, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. I am pumped to be back. This is my first regular season stream of the NBA season, and I'm honored to be joined by you. I know we crushed the preseason together, but I've been dealing with a pulled hamstring during the regular season, so they've been keeping me out. But I'm pumped to be here. I unfortunately did not predict the Jaguars to beat the Bills or the Broncos to be up 30-0 against the Cowboys today. So I'm not in the best spirits, but I'm excited to win it all back in NBA DFS with you, especially.
Yeah, man. I mean, like you said, I guess it has been that long. We haven't done a stream since the preseason, and because you've been out, that's why I've been opening up some of these shows, doing the hosting duties. So you got two hosts here for this 7-game Sunday evening slate. Little earlier, 6 p.m. Eastern start, and 4 of those 7 games going to go off right at lock. So, Steph, let's go ahead and jump in to the first one, and I'll start with Utah and Orlando. A little bit of news from really all 4 of these games, and a lot of that news already coming through. So starting with the Utah side, we've got Mike Conley going to rest again for this Utah team. Rudy Gay also remains out, has not made his debut yet for the Jazz. So going up against an Orlando team that's been struggling, but also kind of playing at a slow pace. You've got Donovan Mitchell up top, 9-3. Rudy Gobert in that same salary range on DraftKings. And then, the usual suspects when we've got somebody out, Jordan Clarkson, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Joe Ingles, who's priced at a very nice 4.9K, guard forward eligible. So, Steph, what strikes your fancy from this Utah team?
Honestly, not much. I mean, the difference between Mike Conley being out and Donovan Mitchell being out is very different for this Utah team, right? Without Donovan Mitchell, it opens it up for really 3 players, right? For Bojan, for Mike Conley, and Jordan Clarkson, and actually Joe Ingles, so I should say 4 players. With Mike Conley out, I will see a slight usage and minutes uptick for both Jordan Clarkson and Joe Ingles. But there's no one I particularly love in this game, especially on this isn't a super small Sunday slate, and there's a lot of really interesting value. I was excited to actually play Jalen Suggs because I was expecting Cole Anthony not to play, but he's going to be available to play, so that kind of killed that interest. So unfortunately, I have a pretty boring answer to start us off. Right, I don't really have a ton of interest in the Utah-Orlando slow-paced matchup that has some blowout potential when there's other kind of intriguing values on this slate and better game environments.
Yeah, man, you kind of talked about that Orlando side and Jalen Suggs specifically. I had a ton of interest. I've kind of been going back to him slate after slate, just thinking one of these days, his production is going to catch up with the opportunity that he's been seeing. But with Cole Anthony and just kind of a secondary play for me. And again, the matchup, not great for this Orlando team. Pretty big dogs. Let me pull up last I looked, Jazz 12-point road favorites. So not quite 100 projected points for the Orlando Magic team. So I agree,
Zach,
not a ton.
Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. I was going to say one thing that I do think is important to note, this game is going to be completely low owned, right? There's not many people going to get to this game at all. If you are playing Donovan Mitchell, I know stacking in NBA is kind of sometimes controversial and not really necessary, but this is one of those. This is a particular moment where I think it's important that if you do play Donovan Mitchell, you should probably play Cole Anthony or Wendell Carter Jr., someone from Orlando who puts up points and production, because Donovan Mitchell isn't that cheap at 9,300. And again, in a slow-paced game environment, Orlando's got to really keep it close or even be leading for Donovan Mitchell to hit a true ceiling that you're looking for. So if you are playing Donovan Mitchell, I would spend on an Orlando player such as Cole Anthony or Wendell Carter Jr. And then lastly, I'll just say my favorite Jazz to target in this game actually would be Joe Ingles at 4,900 with guard forward eligibility.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think we can probably go ahead and move on. Let's touch on Milwaukee and Washington, because we did get some news that we're keeping an eye on. Daniel Gafford has been announced starting, but apparently went back to the locker room mid warm up. And again, this isn't like we're shooting layup lines with 6 minutes on the clock. This is 90 minutes before tip off. So I think he probably had a bathroom break or had to go get that ankle wrapped, re-wrapped. It was maybe too tight, too loose, something like that. And then on that Milwaukee side, still no Chris Middleton, no Brook Lopez. Dante DiVincenzo remains out. Grayson Allen was questionable, but he is available with that non-COVID related illness. Steph, I'm really looking forward to seeing this Milwaukee starting lineup because I think Drew Holiday gets back into the starting five, and I have him Eddie and I have him as a 10 right now in the rankings. So what's your take on, let's start with this Milwaukee side.
So I will say if Drew Holiday does end up starting, like returns to the starting lineup, he's going to eventually start right for this team. He's not going to come off the bench forever. Then yeah, you have to probably trust in minute security that he's going to be somewhere in that 30-minute range. And at 6,400, he's too cheap, right? It's as simple as that. He probably won't be that high owned as people are going to have reservations about his minute security. I want to kind of start with Giannis. I mean, let's say Daniel Gafford actually is hurt and he doesn't play. It's going to be Kyle Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell. I don't know who's guarding Giannis, and Giannis isn't that cheap at 11-4, but if this game stays kind of close enough, this is a 60 burger in my opinion, whereas there's absolutely no one who can stop him. I probably am not playing both Drew and Giannis in the same lineup, just because another spend up and he's another 10K player, and I'm getting ahead of myself, is Paul George, and I think there's enough value to play both Giannis and Paul George in the same lineup. I would actually prioritize George over Giannis, but I think both are just elite plays. And I'm kind of starting. If I think Giannis is just an exceptional play, just because there's absolutely no one on Washington that can kind of contain him whatsoever. I think I'm a little more pessimistic on Drew's minutes than I think you and Eddie are. Even if he starts, I think yes, if he starts, he's not going to play 20 minutes. That's guaranteed. And I think he's going to be somewhere between 25 and 28. And again, at 6,400, that's probably enough anyway. But I think he's going to see the 30 to 34, right? If he does see the 30 to 34, then then he's an exceptional play, right? That's kind of how it works here. And so the way I would view Drew Holiday is just unless there's an actual statement on what his minutes are going to be, kind of take a stand on what his minutes are going to be, right? If you think it's 30 plus, you should play Drew Holiday. Mm-hmm. If you think it's 25 and under, don't play him. If it's between 25 and 30, you could probably play him, but it's kind of totally up to you.
Yeah, I think secondary at best if you think it's 25 to mm-hmm. Do you hear something?
I do. What happened here?
That was the greatest. Oh my God. You guys are exceptional. That was incredible.
Eddie.
What's up, everybody? I had been. Oh, you guys are the fucking best. Okay, so yeah, that was exceptional. Welcome, everybody. I had been planning on crashing some shows, and there were certain people within the company more business-minded, more salient, sapient, intelligent than I, thinking we should announce that. We could get more people. I'm like, wait, a better idea. We can make a cool graphic and do this really fun thing. Oh my God. Okay, that was great. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Zach? How's it going, Stefano? I'm excited to get on the show here.
Yeah, good to see you. We were just discussing the Bucks and particularly Drew Holiday.
Yeah,
and I wanted to have this conversation with you on air. I'm very high on Drew.
I nuked your ranking. I did it. I brought him back down to. I brought him back down to a double 9. Just with impunity, I got on top of that one when I saw it. I think 10 is too strong because I do think I think they're very competent with and confident with George Hill as a starter. I think there's at least a reasonable chance he plays 28 minutes. I have him at 29. I think he starts and I have him at 29. That's my number. And at 29, I have him for a very competent 33 fantasy points. And that's just exceptional. That's fine. And I think there's a GPP upside. And I like playing him. 9 is still a strong ranking for me. If I see Drew Holiday in a GPP lineup, especially once we get the news he's starting, okay, thumbs up. Good stuff here, because we don't know he's starting yet, right? We're still waiting on Bucks.
Right.
Okay, 46 minutes out, and that'll help a lot here. So some chance he doesn't start, which already makes a 10 feel a little queasy. And then, but the upside is there. Could get 33 minutes. Could get, obviously there's non-Middleton upside, non-Brook Lopez upside. Like, there's all kinds of ways it turns out great. 10 for me requires a bit more of a floor for this. So I dropped the Nerf hammer and went down to 9.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the ranking was only based on me thinking that he was going to start. I had him for 32 minutes in that scenario. But what Stefano said before you appeared, I completely agree with. If he's not starting, I think you stay far away. And then if he does start it just depends on how many minutes you think he's going to get. I think I am ending up on the higher end of that range compared to you two guys. But I think 9 just fine as a rank, especially as it stands now. Without a starting lineup. Anything else from this team? Because I think I have a lot of love for a Bobby Portis at 4-6. But Steph, how do you feel about Bobby?
So the Bobby Portis game is happening, right? It's going to happen sooner rather than later. I think. I'm assuming so. I think what was the last Bucks game? I actually played Bobby Portis. He was around like 10% owned in some of the higher dollar single entry, and he didn't get there, right? But again, you're not playing Bobby Portis in cash. If you're playing multiple lineups, I want a couple of Bobby Portis shares. I'm okay playing him in just single entry formats if you just have really big balls and you want to just kind of shoot for the stars of the Bobby Portis game. But it's nothing you should feel solid on. But there's certainly a ceiling there for Bobby Portis anytime he's on the slate.
Eddie, what's your thoughts on?
I was sorry. I was going with someone in the chat and looking at our hellacious Ivica Zubac ranking. With the rankings, it doesn't appear like it's always auto-updating when I put in new figures, but maybe I'm missing something. But yeah, I raised Ivica Zubac. I agreed that's too low. We may not even get Ibaka back, and the matchup is great, and there's a chance it's against the Nick Richards, Vernon Carey's of the world. So yeah, I think we need to have a conversation there. But regarding the Milwaukee Bucks, yeah, I would think unsurprisingly relative to the field, I have Giannis as by far my best. I have him as the highest scoring player of the day. I think he's your cash building block. I have him as the second best stud behind Paul George. I would rather play Paul George as of this writing per dollar, per ownership, etc. My second ranked guy is Bobby Portis. I have him currently at 23 minutes and 25.5 fantasy points. That's pretty good. And there's obviously a very significant ceiling there. I prefer playing him to Thanasis if we were going to go sort of at value bigs for this team right now. They're both eligible at forward, and I don't think you want to use the center spot, but sort of that's my interest on this team. Giannis is great and still missing Middleton, and with some kind of limited Drew, the 80-point ceiling is very much there, and I just find any amount of Giannis you want to play. It's by no means sneaky. He's going to be in the high 30s owned is my best guess. Second for me is B-Po, is Punch Face. It would be Bobby Portis.
I got a question for you guys because I'm actually struggling with this one. Let's say we get the news that Gafford actually got hurt during pregame warmups in his scratch. Are we listen, Montrezl Harrell's an incredible fantasy producer when the minutes are there, and the minutes are likely going to be there. I don't love this matchup for Montrezl Harrell, and 6,500 isn't like the discount he was when we got this scenario when it first happened. I was kind of curious your thoughts on Montrezl if that scenario plays out.
Yeah, I mean, we know how viable Montrezl is as a player. I think I'm trying to remember the SD ranking. DK, I think he's 6,500. So his price did take a gigantic goose up from the beginning of the season. I had him basically, and I could look it up, but basically a virtual minute split today. It would depend exactly when we get some more firm news relative to lock time. So if a minute from now we get announced starting, yeah, that would boost his numbers for me for something like 33 minutes. And I don't actually mind the matchup that much. He would be projected. I'd prefer him to Drew Holiday. I'll put it that way. He would be
Montrezl Harrell, 1.45x, by the way, on Superdraft and forward eligible there as well.
Not bad. Not unreasonable. I mean, he would end up projecting for a pretty goodly number of fantasy points. I think he'd project for 33 minutes and 36.5 fantasy points, if I remember the ranks and the rates per matchup. So, at that point, it would get very, very interesting for me. If he and Drew were both starting, I'd have to sit down and think about it for a little bit. the positionality definitely would be a relevant factor there.
Anything else from the Milwaukee-Washington game, or can we move on to what I think is, a really interesting Pacer side now with Malcolm Brogdon out? Pacers at Kings.
Yeah, I obviously a lot of interest in that. Did we give a passing comment for anyone else on the Wizards?
We haven't really given a Bradley Beal take yet. I'm honestly kind of I like Bradley Beal. For me, I really want to get to Giannis and I really want to get to Paul George, and they're both. It's you can't really fit Bradley Beal with both those players. Now, I think Giannis and Beal correlate pretty well. If you expect this game to kind of blow out, I should say blow out's the wrong word there, but you know what I meant. Kind of get into like a track meet and actually be a really good fantasy game. But I'm not quite getting to Beal, even though I'm not against it whatsoever.
Yeah, I would just
go ahead.
I was just saying, I would much rather DeJounte Murray tonight, LaMelo Ball tonight for a couple $100 cheaper on DraftKings.
That's reasonable for me. I think I would rather get to Beal. Now, it's a little tricky between those two guys. Beal has actually I will pull up some numbers here, but Beal has actually had a pretty significant amount of success against the Bucks. Now, again, this isn't going to be exactly the same as the team, but the way they defend him tends to leave him open for a decent number of threes, a different amount of upside. If I go down here and download some results and look at, I don't know.
While you're looking at that, I just one thing I kind of wanted to note, and like this is happening to other players too. And I think Bradley Beal is one of the players like James Harden, right, who's actually being affected by sort of the new rules, right? So like 9,200 at first glance, you probably think that's I think that's a fair price. I don't think that's like too low or too high, but I don't think it's like an exceptional value. It's like I've honestly been kind of, it's almost like a wait and see approach, which isn't great in DFS, right? Because you kind of want to be ahead before you are too late. I just like for guys like Beal, right, who are scoring dependent, who are seeing almost like 7 to 9 less trips to the free throw line per game, that has a legit impact on their fantasy production when they're scoring dependent. So for me, it's kind of like I'm kind of putting him on the backseat a little bit.
Yeah, this is a different Wizards team than last year in a number of ways. They're playing significantly slower. So like when we look at the matchups and when we look at the Bucks, I think one of the reasons I think Giannis is getting a whole lot of goose as far as ownership that I expect is the fact that people are like, oh, against the Wizards, that's good, but it's not nearly as good as it was, say, last year. Like they have their defense is markedly better. I think I was looking at defensive ranking a little while ago. It's not good, but it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. And defensive rating in the NBA right now, they're sitting at 10th. I thought they were around the middle. So, and their pace is markedly down too. So that makes all the Bucks a little bit worse, obviously, and additionally makes Bradley Beal a little bit worse. So I don't have his numbers landing anywhere in this range, but for example, just his last 4 games as a sample versus the Bucks, and someone said they brought it up before in chat, he had 61, 62, 55, and 54 fantasy points. Now, this is different teams. His usage is a little less than these are the 2020 and 2021 games. Those are the 4 games this decade, if you will. So I don't think we can predict him for the 57 average in there. But when I go through and project him out, I get something like 47 and a half fantasy points today. And that's putting 52, 55 in play. Everything from Gafford being out, I think potentially the ceiling is there, I guess is my point. I think the normal sentiment will be like, I would rather save 200 on LaMelo Ball, or I would rather Paul George, I would rather Giannis, and all those things make sense. But I think he's an above average GPP play. I think I would want to be over the field on Bradley Field. Altogether, I think it's a pretty good environment for him. So that's the short version. We're taking too long on one player.
Indiana at Sacramento, the rare 3 p.m.
The matinee local time.
Yeah. But the big news, Malcolm Brogdon going to sit for this Indiana team. And for me, Steph, this makes Karis LeVert a smash play on DraftKings especially after letting the field down in the same spot, albeit Jeremy Lamb will be active today. 6 for 21 in his 34 minutes on Friday, 0 for 8 from 3 for Karis LeVert. To me, the usage is going to be there again. I expect him to bounce back in terms of his efficiency, and I think the ownership will be lower on this slate than it was on Friday. How are you treating LeVert and this Pacers team?
Listen, the Kings are, I mean, it's still very early in the season, and this may change, but it seems like the Kings are finally playing at a faster pace under Luke Walton than they ever have been. I think they're 10th right now, just opened the year. They're 24th in defensive rating. That makes for a positive game environment for Caris LeVert. I mean, 6,900 for LeVert, increased usage definitely works. TJ McConnell also certainly in play. Domantas Sabonis, I mean, I feel like his production has been a little like lackluster, even though it's been still fairly solid, right? He's outside his last 2 games, he was kind of consistently in the 40s. I'm not against getting to Sabonis as well at 9,400. I'd probably rank him LeVert, Sabonis, McConnell in that order. I think you can also get to Chris Duarte, who we've seen kind of put up decent numbers. I do think LeVert hurts Duarte the most. So it's not the same situation where Duarte was playing without Brogdon and LeVert. So LeVert, probably my favorite at 6,900. He likely will be the most owned out of the bunch, though.
Yeah, I think you get LeVert and McConnell sucking down a big amount of ownership here.
The first 6 games of the season, to your point, Steph, when all those guys were out, Duarte, no less than 15 shots in those first 6 games. The last 4, 11, 11, 9, 7, kind of correlating with LeVert's increase in minutes. So, Eddie, how do you feel about that 10 ranking on Caris LeVert that got brought up after Brogdon was ruled out?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I actually have him up to 35 minutes. I have him up to 43 fantasy points at 6,900. That's too easy.
It's a very nice price.
Yeah, it's incredibly nice. It's one of my favorites. Garden forward eligibility, certainly it's very hard for me to get away from that. And even on what is the Superdraft ranking? Remind me.
Superdraft rank was an 8. He's 1.3 there, and I think a 9 may be more appropriate.
It's an 8 or a 9. It's definitely at 1.3, he needs to put up 47 raw to get there, probably.
Yeah.
Which is well within the range of possibilities, but there's some much nicer priced guys, I think, like DeJounte and Paul George still getting a multiplier, and but it's I think a 9 might be closer there. Let's make sure we get Brogdon out of the rankings, by the way. I think I saw him a minute ago. We can put a bullet in him.
Would you guys want to play 2 of the 3 Pacers, or are you looking just to play 1?
By the 3, you mean Duarte, McConnell, and
I was going to say McConnell, Brogdon, Sabonis. Are you looking to get to 2 of the 3, or you want to play 1?
I'm absolutely fine stacking this game up a little bit. It has been, it's round that 223 over under that's been the highest number of the game, so it's plenty decent matchup to stack. It's a close line. I think we're in Sacramento, so I think it's a 2-point game either way or something. So it's
1.5 right now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's certainly a game I don't mind getting a piece of necessarily on either side of the ball. I think it's a little harder to figure out what the heck is going on with the Kings and make the picks there. But I don't think there's really anybody on this Pacers team who we expect to see a lot of time. So Duarte, LeVert, Sabonis, McConnell, at least those 4 who are necessarily out of play here. I think, the interesting plays is I think Jeremy Lamb was announced available, and I think Justin Holiday is still around as well. So those plays deserve some attention as well. But I think those 4 are very solid, and I do think it's, not crazy to have Miles Turner as a piece here as well. So there's quite a bit going on. So we have a number of guys coming back with really uncertain minutes there. But those 4 guys, I think, are core pieces. So I don't have an issue with 2 of the spend-ups, to refer to your answer. And again, Sacramento rebounds for garbage. We've seen more of Sabonis achieving or getting very close to triple-doubles, and so he's going to handle the ball more, facilitate the offense a little bit more. There's a lot going on here. So I think, McConnell and LeVert at their clearly too low price tags for the ceiling will get a lot of attention, but I would struggle with what to do with, say, Sabonis versus Beal in my guy I'm adding for a slightly off-the-board GPP play here. So, those 4 guys I think deserve a lot of attention. So I don't know if in one lineup I have 2 of them. I would be shocked if I didn't have 1. That would seem very odd to think one of those guys doesn't manage to get there.
From the Kings side, especially if you're going to stack up multiple Pacers, what's your priority, Steph? Like, I think to me, Davion Mitchell probably stands out just as the guy at 4-4 can get close to 30 minutes, over 26 on the season through the first 9 games, and starting to shoot the ball better. So what are you looking for from the Kings?
They're kind of tricky, right? Davion Mitchell has had an impact on De'Aaron Fox, right? So, like, how De'Aaron Fox has played to open this season, he's overpriced at $8,700. Now, I mean, granted, the Pacers, this is an elite game environment, right? So, and no one's probably going to play De'Aaron Fox. So, there is interest in tournaments of a low-owned De'Aaron Fox who can always put up a 50-burger kind of on any given slate. But for the most part, I'm not looking to get to Fox. I'm not probably going to chase Holmes's his 50-burger, right, from his last game against Mason Plumlee. I was a Mason Plumlee owner in that game, and I was on the wrong side of that one. But I think Rashawn Holmes is totally fine. And the Pacers are usually a team you can attack at center. I think Tyrese Halliburton is probably my favorite target on the Sacramento side, just because, again, this is going to be a pace-friendly game. Halliburton's someone who kind of sneakily goes like 12, 7, 6 with 2 steals and is priced well. And if he gets hotter or maybe, picks up a couple extra rebounds, right, you can approach that 40-plus point DK point threshold. So Halliburton's probably my favorite. I'm with you on Davion Mitchell. He's not like the amazing value that he was kind of prior to this 3-game stretch that he's been on at 4,400, but 4,400 is still fine. He's going to play somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes. So I have no issue getting to Davion Mitchell. If you're looking for just a complete punt, I'm not recommending him whatsoever. There's other punts I prefer, but Mo Harkless is 3,400 in a positive game environment, playing upwards of 20 minutes. We saw him get to 30 once. He'll probably play somewhere between 24 and 26 minutes. So if you're playing 150 lineups, I maybe would include him in the player pool, but would not want a ton of exposure. That's kind of how I view the Kings.
Someone keeps saying, "What does my shirt say?" It says habitual line stepper. There you go.
I need one of those.
Yeah. So I think my favorite is probably Harrison Barnes. This is close for me. So I would start by saying we shouldn't underestimate how bad this Pacers defense has been and is going to be. Like, Kings are defensively bad. I was just looking at rankings for the year, and just raw defensive ranking, which there are a lot of defensive stats. None of them are great, but there's a decent one to look at. Kings are 24th. Pacers are 25th. Mm-hmm. And now they're playing without Malcolm Brogdon, who is one of their better guard and wing defenders, so that I don't expect to necessarily improve in this environment. So the run back is definitely where it gets tougher. I'm fine with Davion Mitchell. I think this whole year I've been a little bit less excited about him than Zach has. But at 4,400, there's obviously in this matchup, it's a fine, cheaper piece where we're very possibly spending up on a couple other guys. But Harrison Barnes, has been forced to play out of position for a number of years. He's a power forward, and he's very good as a power forward. The shot volume has been off the last couple games. I think it was down in the single digits. He was picking up, 8 shots, but there's a really solid floor there. He's been rebounding extremely well. I expect there to be, I think he should do well, seeing lots of Sabonis across the ball. So I generally think there really is a very good chance that he gets back into some of his early season form here. And so at 7,500 plus, a lot of people will just play Levert over him, as well as a number of other guys in that price range. So I think the ownership is pretty low. So I think if I'm building a GPP lineup and I'm looking for a run back for the Pacers, a lot of people are, I think my order would probably be Barnes, then Holmes, then Halliburton, then Fox, then Hield. Or Davion would get in there. I'm excluding Davion and Mo Harkless, who's been consistently getting some real time. He's not exciting. I think there's other, I would much rather play Alec Burks when we get to that conversation. But
yeah, there we go, Eddie. That was going to be my note is on Alec Burks too.
I'm a pretty big Alec Burks fan here. I don't know. I think I have to get in there and make another. I already made sort of a rating swap and bumped him up a little. I should probably bump him up a little more, but I'm a pretty big Alec Burks fan here. So we can get there when we get to that. But that would be what I would say about the Kings.
Well, that would be our next game and the last of these 4 that go off right at lock here in about 26 minutes. So let's start with that Knicks side. Kemba sitting down and Derrick Rose getting the start in his place. Derrick Rose, a phenomenal play at 4.8, but let's talk Alec Burks, who I think still guard forward eligible, 3.2 on DraftKings, and maybe some Emmanuel Quickly at 3.4.
Sure.
I'll start. I love both Emmanuel Quickly and Alec Burks, honestly. I think I actually prefer them over Derrick Rose. And don't get me wrong, Derrick Rose is a safer play who has the safer minute security. But the reason why Derrick Rose has been a really good producer thus far is he's been playing without Julius Randle with that second unit, right? Inserting Derrick Rose with that first unit, that hurts his usage a little bit. I think we see Alec Burks and Emmanuel Quickly take the larger minutes bump, where Derrick Rose maybe sees like slight minutes bump because he's still been playing fairly like solid minutes. I don't think we're going to see Derrick Rose play like 36 or 38 minutes, even with Thibs. But I could be wrong about that. It is Thibs. But I do think Quickly and Burks take a nice step. Derrick Rose, obviously the safest of the three, and there's obviously certainly a ceiling with Derrick Rose, but very high on Burks and Quickly.
Obviously there's some question as how the minutes are going to go here. Tom Thibodeau letting Kemba Walker get a non-injury based rest, just allowing one of his players to rest. That must have been hard for him. So shout out to Tom Thibodeau and his family dealing with what I'm sure has been an emotionally trying day for him. I'm a pretty big fan of Derrick Rose. I don't know about the ownership. I'm going back and forth on this. I have Derrick Rose as my best Nick, followed by Alec Burks, and then I have some room to move here. Derrick Rose played at least 35 minutes in a game several times last year. Now, I don't have that projected. I have him at 31. There are a lot of ways we can go here, and they can spill off point guard duty onto a number of guys, and Quickly can obviously handle the ball, and Alec Burks can do a decent simulacrum of that as well. And they can just goose Fournier a couple minutes. So I am not shocked to see anywhere from 26 to 36 minutes in regulation out of Derrick Rose. But I do think the matchup is incredibly good. And I just think the most likely scenario is 30 plus fantasy points, and he's just really cheap. And it's hard for me to get away from that. Now, I do think he's super chalky. Now, I have Burks as barely slightly worse rated for me right now, where I have him at 26 minutes and 23 fantasy points, and that's pretty outstanding for his price. He's pretty much my favorite value play of the day. I'm a lot more confident in his minutes than the Quickly minutes. I think there's a real chance you end up with I am not shocked to see Quickly end up playing like 17 minutes still here. And that's, what I currently have him projected for. I think there's plenty of ceiling, but I generally prefer Burks as a player, and you're saving $200 and you're guard forward eligible on DraftKings as opposed to I think Quickly is just point guard. Mm-hmm. So for all those reasons, I have Burks, Rose as guys, and again consider the matchup with Cleveland and how big they are playing right now. I'm even a little more inclined to lean towards the members of the guard value. So that's sort of where I'm sitting right now in that scenario. I think all these guys are fine in GPPs. You can play Mitch Robb and Evan Fournier and Emmanuel Quickly and Julius Randle. Cleveland's defense is at best a movable feast. So I think all of these guys can certainly get there, but the pace isn't as brilliant as I would like it to be. So I think that's really how I look. I actually built a placeholder today on DraftKings for the first time in a long time. So, it has Rose and Burks in it, and I feel pretty good about that. I think I want both.
Well, how about this Cleveland side? Because we've still got Kevin Love, Lauri Markkanen, Isaac Okoro out, and that should. I don't think I've seen confirmation on a Cavs starting lineup, but it should. We
have seen it. They're starting Dean Wade again at the 3. It's who you'd expect.
Gotcha. So to me, 7.1K on DraftKings, I believe 1.3 on Superdraft. Jarrett Allen is a smash play for me at that price. On DraftKings, close to 40 minutes in the last game. Did cross the 40-minute threshold in the game before that. It's just too much opportunity for a guy who's going to have a massive double-double in this spot. Evan Mobley also at 7K flat, I think, comes in behind Allen for me, but also going to have a massive minutes load. So, Eddie, what are you prioritizing from this Cleveland side?
Yeah, that's again a little trickier for me. Feels sort of like we're looking at the Sacramento situation as opposed to where we think this usage and where the production is going to land. I go back and forth between Darius Garland and Jared Allen as the guy I would like to target most on this team. I think Jared Allen is your best point per dollar play. It's really hard to estimate how expensive the center spot is. I have him at 38 minutes and 38.5 fantasy points. That's a very, very good projection for 7,100. The Knicks defense has not been as good as we would expect it to be for a couple of reasons we don't have to get into right now, but they're also in the lower third of the NBA right now, unsurprisingly. And that's a really safe play, and he is underpriced. He should cost about $8,000 in this matchup. Darius Garland, I think I kind of prefer getting to in a GPP. I didn't have time to stat this out, but has looked good the last few times I've seen him play, which I hate that sort of non-quantitative evidence, but I just can see being advantaged by having really poor guard play on the side of the Knicks that is even thinner at this point. 6,400 for him is still a little bit too cheap, and I think the ownership sits around 6-7% as opposed to Jared Allen, who I think gets closer to 20%. So Allen is the best play on the team. Darius Garland probably the first guy to whom I would like to pivot as a GPP play. After that, I think $4,200 Chetty Osman still has a ceiling that people can get to. I think $3,400 Dean Wade is absolutely fine to run out there, eligible at either power forward or small forward position. Gave us 17 points in his first game and then 20 in the last one. And it doesn't require things to go incredibly weird for him to randomly get a 30-point game. So he would not be out of my player pool. I do, have Mobley projected for 6.5 points less than Jared Allen, but he is also going to be well less owned. Jared Allen's going to be in the high teens or something. Evan Mobley is going to be in the mid single digits at this point. So again, a game that's attracted me, but some combination of Allen, then Garland, then Mobley, and then I still think I'd have interest in both Wade and Osman as guys who have to fill in time here. They're going to collectively probably play 48 minutes. I wouldn't play them both in the same lineup. Is a perfectly reasonable point, but yeah.
So, Steph, before we get your takes here on the Cleveland team, some starting lineups coming in. And very interesting for the Bucks. Drew Holiday starting at the 1, George Hill starting at the 2, or you could flip-flop them, but starting alongside each other, and Bobby Portis at the 5. So, again, I made my position clear on how I'm treating a starting Drew Holiday, and for me, Bobby Portis starting just bumps him up even further as a priority for me. We also got the Thunder starting lineup against the Spurs tonight. It's SGA, Dort, Giddey, Basley, and JRE, Jeremiah Robinson Earl will get the start at the 5.
Start? That's interesting.
Yes. So what are you doing with that news, Steph?
I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with Bobby Portis, and if I actually like that, how much do I actually like the fact that he's starting?
I think I love it for everyone.
Yeah.
Just saying. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eddie. Because I'm still kind of processing it. I don't really have a great answer, but I'm tending to lean on what you just said, where I think I really like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna reproject this, but you're gonna get high 20s in minutes and low 30s in fantasy points now at 4,600. We're 17 minutes before lock, which is very nice. That's very hard for me to avoid. Many windows. If that is that and they rotate like that, yeah, I have him as my best play on the team now. One of my best plays on the slate at 28 minutes and 32.25 fantasy points. And keeping in mind that with the potentiality, do we have Gafford news, by the way? But beyond that,
I have not seen anything on Gafford yet.
Okay, I'm gonna follow up on that. But I think Portis now becomes the better Zubac, better.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He's as forward eligible. He's a better Joe Ingles at this point most of the time. So I think it's a really nice price saver. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Bobby. You can play him next to Giannis. You don't have to play him next to Giannis. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Do you think this affects Jared Allen's ownership at all?
Not significantly, as most of the times. I mean, they're in different pricing tiers. Most of the time, Jared Allen was going to be in a center spot, or all the time, Jared Allen was going to be in a center or utility spot, whereas most people will play Portis at the 4, which is one of the many nice things about playing Bobby Portis. You can play him at the 4. But no, I don't think it will markedly change that. It'll drive down some ownership on some other guys we like, Ivica Zubac. It'll drive down, believe it or not, like Joe Ingles' ownership a little bit. Other guys, I think it would necessarily depress their ownership on. It will drop. Not really that so much. It'll infinitesimally drop Derrick Rose, believe it or not. Mitch Robb a little bit, I suppose. Jayshawn Tate, if people go there, we do have to get to the Rockets at some point soon. But I think it will basically evenly spread the ownership pulse.
So,
Steph, getting back to Cleveland, anything you wanted to add on the Cavaliers?
I agree kind of with everything that was just said. Jared Allen's just too cheap. If Jared Allen's already a good fantasy per minute producer. If he's going to get close to 40 minutes at 7,100, the math sort of works out. Jared Allen's a good play.
So I think the 2 games out of the 3 that we haven't discussed yet that we need to prioritize here are San Antonio and OKC, especially with that JRE news. But then the hammer is Hornets at Clippers. And we've already had some debate about, or not debate, but some discussion or bringing up his name at least for Ivica Zubac. Serge Ibaka is not on the injury report, not confirmed that he's going to make his season debut tonight. I personally think he'll get in there for 8 to 12 minutes, and that has me lower on Zubac than almost everybody that I've spoken with today. So how are you guys attacking this Clippers team? Obviously, Paul George at 10-4 now, I think, is something that all 3 of us probably love. So, Steph, how are you looking at the Clippers?
Honestly, I'm looking at Paul George and I'm looking at Eric Bledsoe. Kind of cringe when I say Eric Bledsoe every single time. I just think he's too cheap. And the minutes, like at his price right now, the minutes, like kind of somewhat insecurity isn't as much of an issue. So I like Eric Bledsoe in a positive game environment. But Paul George, like, kind of remains to be the underpriced superstar who is just really, really, really producing well. And 10-4, again, some people might kind of scoff at that price tag thing about Paul George in past seasons. That is still, I think, a little too cheap based on what his role is on this team, especially in this is a positive game environment for Paul George. So Paul George is actually my favorite dollar for dollar spend up, slightly above Giannis on the slate.
Edward.
Yeah.
Clippers.
How you doing? Clippers. Well, let me. All right. Sorry, I was dealing with Jeremiah Robinson Earl stuff
Sure.
for a minute there.
Aren't we all, right?
Yeah, I'm excited to play Paul George. I especially like the matchup. I have him projected for, I think, 54.5 fantasy points at 10-4. That's a very, very good number. Still no Kawhi, still no best friend Marcus Morris, which helps us out quite a bit. After that, I think the sort of sexy plays I would get to next would be, I think I would rather get to Reggie Jackson before Eric Bledsoe. Again, I'm just looking for guys with a ceiling at a medium price. And again, everyone is playing Karis LeVert. Nobody wants to run out there and play Eric Bledsoe, play Eric Bledsoe or play Reggie Jackson, who is talking about, but the same thing sort of applies. No one ever wants to play Eric Bledsoe. But, Reggie Jackson in his last 5 games played 34, 34, 39, 36, and 37 minutes. That's all nice. And shots for 15, 12, 17, 18, and 16. Last 2 games, 50 and 30 fantasy points. Like, just not enough people are going to get there. This game is actually projected to stay really close. And Charlotte is arguably the worst defense in the NBA. We've talked about some bad defensive teams right now. They're shit. KJ Martin is definitely another conversation we're getting into there. So we got to talk about Rockets sometime soon. But for me, Paul George is a building block. I don't think he's a must. I would have him in one lineup. I think he's going to be very heavily owned. I think he probably projects as the best stud on the slate on everyone's projection system. So I'd expect you're going to get, low 40s ownership on him. I think it's going to be really significant. But yeah, I think I would go to Reggie and then Bledsoe, and I wouldn't be necessarily shy about other guys. Ivica Zubac, I have no issue whatsoever with leaving utility open and him being a high priority. We don't know what the hell Charlotte is going to be doing at center, assuming Mason Plumlee doesn't play. I think he's still sitting at questionable. His minutes have been very impressive recently, and 46 or 4,800, whichever Ivica Zubac was. I think there's a very real chance that ends up being an excellent play in this case. So we need to wait. We need a couple things to break our way, but I have a lot of interest in the Clippers as a team, as should everyone.
So just real quick, let me make my case for why I am off Zubac. I think he might get rug pulled here, so to speak, on the minutes. I mentioned already that I think Serge Ibaka is going to get in there and play one rotation each half. I also don't think Isaiah Hartenstein gets completely thrown out of this rotation either. I think he's just obviously his minutes get pulled back as well with Ibaka returning. And I think that the kind of, not the nail in the coffin, maybe that's a little bit too strong of a phrase there, but with Plumlee going from I don't even know if he was probable to start, but the midday questionable has me worried. And I think if he's out, obviously there's guys like Nick Richards. I think you mentioned Eddie Vernon Carey Jr. also there.
It would be Nick. Vernon Carey is just straight behind him at this point. Like, I think Vernon Carey ends up maybe playing some backup five, but we don't need to do that. You play Jeremiah Robinson Earl before him. You play. There's a lot of those. Big Dick Nick is a possibility.
Yeah, neither of those guys.
Gafford starting. This was an hour ago. Yeah, I think he left the court after that original tweet went to Selman there. But I will get into News Tank shortly.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything else since that, almost 90 minutes ago now that tweet came out. But just to kind of finish this up, I just think this game could go small. I think somebody mentioned in the chat asking about could Miles Bridges be put at the 5. I think he could play a few minutes there. I also think you see McDaniels get back into the lineup and kind of match up with what I think the Clippers would want to do in that situation, which is go small, even without Marcus Morris in there, running Batum. We've seen Justice Winslow get in at times this season since they've been shorthanded in smaller matchups. I don't think that's necessary. I'm not calling for double-digit minutes from Justice Winslow, just trying to illustrate that they have plenty of guys that are interchangeable wings in terms of their size. And we've seen that with Terrence Mann getting elevated minutes this year, Luke Kennard playing a ton of minutes. And so Ivica Zubac is somebody I've seen around the industry projected for between 25 and 35% ownership. Not somewhere I want to go tonight. But I know I'm in the minority on that position.
Well, I think like for me, he is more of a GPP play based on what we see over the next couple hours and any news we see on Ibaka. And if he's starting, I think he's a very good GPP play because there's an upside there. Now, if I was to, and I appreciate you making the counter argument, and I would add to that sure, he played 30 whatever minutes each of the last 2 games, but both of those were against the Timberwolves, I think, where he's dealing with Karl Anthony Towns, right? Am I getting that wrong? But I think both of the last 2 Clippers games where he played 30 whatever minutes were against Towns. And previously in the year with no Ibaka around, he was frequently playing 21, 24, 23, whatever the hell minutes. So there are a lot of ways for a minutes floor to expose itself. I just think there is a GPP ceiling to get there as well. But again, I didn't bump him to a 10. I bumped him to, I think, an 8-7 or something, which I think is a decent ranking.
Sure. Well, and we've got, I think Isaiah Hartenstein dealt with a little bit of foul trouble in that first matchup against Minnesota, which contributed a little bit to Zubac. Sure. But two more games that are coming up quicker than that late night hammer. So let's talk. We've talked a little bit about Jeremiah Robinson Earl in the chat. So let's talk Houston Golden State first quickly here, because we also saw some KJ Martin questions in the chat. Eric Gordon going to be out today for Houston, and Daniel House Jr. also remains out. So Eddie, talk to me about KJ Martin Jr. Esquire Jr.
Oh my God,
power forward only.
You remember my favorite naming memes. I love you so much. No, Stefano, talk about it for a second. I'm trying to reproject them. I have a Alperen Sengun thing that doesn't quite make sense for me, so I just need 30 seconds to straighten my
system. So I mean, these are two of the highest paced teams in the NBA, right? I think the Rockets are 1 and the Warriors are 5 right now. Yeah, Rockets are 1, Warriors are 5 in pace. The Warriors are the number 1 defensive team. Their defensive efficiency, I should say, is number 1. It's still early in the year, but they've been playing very good defense.
Yep.
And the Rockets haven't been as terrible defensively as I probably thought they would be. They are right in the middle of the pack. So there's 2 punts that I think make sense or in play between KJ Martin and Daniel Teis. Both should see minutes. I think Teis will see more minutes, right? He played 32 in that first game back. He's still priced fairly well at 3,800. Not a priority for me, but just a usable value. I think KJ Martin's interesting because like his minutes floor, right, is probably like 17 minutes, I would say. And let's say the Warriors kind of run away with this one. He certainly will blow up run. He's a strong per minute producer at 3,400. I think he is definitely a value in play. I don't think he's just like a direct benefactor from Eric Gordon. I think sort of those minutes get spread out across a couple bodies, and he would be one of them. I like this game environment a lot. If you think the Rockets are going to stay in it, I think Kevin Porter Jr. is priced very, very appealingly at 6,300, especially in somewhat of a frantically paced game environment. Again, the Warriors defense has been exceptional, but we still like to target pace, especially for guys like Kevin Porter Jr., who might see a slight uptick in rebounds, right? Just because you get extra shots and sort of how pace-friendly games work for DFS. So I like this game a lot. I'm struggling to try and, like, if I'm playing one lineup, right, if I'm playing single entry formats, I'm trying to get exposure to this game. And it's not that easy because there are a lot of really appealing game environments on the slate. And the Bobby Portis kind of news starting sort of threw off my exposure in single entry tournaments in this game. But I like this game. I like Jae'Sean Tate a lot too at 5K. I think he's like kind of the perfect player that benefits from a game environment like this, where he'll probably pick up an extra steal or two, a couple extra rebounds, maybe a couple fast break points. And, at 5K, it doesn't take a whole lot for him to beat that price.
Eddie? Nice. Yeah, so I don't know. I think my favorite guy from this game would actually be Kevin Porter Jr. I like the pace. Gordon being out just gooses everyone. Gordon missed, I want to say, just one game this year. I may have this wrong. But I will look this up. But there was one game in which he missed this year, and there was a really nice offensive effort from everyone else. And you got Christian Wood's best game of the year, where he had, I don't remember, 26 and 16. He had some absolute monster game, and his shots were in the mid-teens. But you also got mid-teen shots out of everyone from Jalen Green to Jae'Sean Tate, who picked up the start there in that instance, and Kevin Porter Jr. And I think another guy in that low 6K price tag who just nobody's going to play. I'm more worried about the matchup, and I don't think we've specifically said yet, the blowout risk. I think they maybe just get the hell. I don't know what the line is in this game, but this Golden State team's a lot better than this Houston team, and taking away one more offensive threat doesn't make it any better. So I'm fine getting to Christian Wood, as I do think it opens the upside a little bit, but not a priority and center only, and that makes things very difficult. So it's weird. KJ Martin, I get the appeal. Right now I have him at 24 minutes and 21 fantasy points. That's pretty good for 3,400. That's nice. He's not Alec Burks, but he's a good man and thorough. So you can certainly get to KJ Martin as a acceptable and fairly common value play. I want to play this guy in a GPP and try to spike an upside. I think my favorite is Porter Jr. And then, drabs of Tate and Teis is only 3,800, and I have for 23 minutes, and that can obviously go extremely well. And Christian Wood, but they will still spread minutes out a lot of ways. Alperen Sengun is going to pick up his 18, 19 minutes. David Nwaba is going to get on the court for high teens. So I don't, for my concern with the ball and everything else, have an overwhelming amount of interest here. I'd kind of like to get to a Rocket. I think my favorite, because again, it's just a spot I like to target, are guys who cost a little more than 6K and can randomly drop 45 or 50 for you. I think I'd probably go to KPJ if I'm trying to get a guy in there, but I don't have a setting aside KJ Martin, who I probably have the most of because very usable value, Kevin Porter Jr., Deshaun Tate, Jalen Green, Christian Wood, even Alperen Sengun, pretty even amounts of having some exposure and trying to get a rocket into my lineup. Trying to get a rocker into my lineup. Shout out guy who's always sending me Shawn Michaels gifts.
I have a question for you two on the other side, just because we're talking about kind of values in the KJ Martin range. Are you buying at all the Gary Payton Jr., or the second, I should say, resurgence the last 2 games? I know one of them I think was out without Damian Lee, and the other one was a huge blowout. But I don't know if you guys remember, like 2 years ago when he was on the Wizards and playing, he had like that run, right, where he was just an exceptional value. He's a good fantasy producer. Do you have any interest in Gary Payton second?
I mean, like, he's fine to play if you don't play anyone in this game who costs anything. Yeah. Like, if you want to run, I think this game blows out, which is obviously very possible. Then I think he plays 18 minutes instead of 8, which makes him possible. But you need a lot of shit. Like, if you look at those 2 games, he shot 70% from the field in those games. It was like, I think that's a little cutesy when we have lots of other. Like, I'd much rather Emmanuel Quickly to give you a form of reference there. I think there's a real chance because, again, remember that we've got the Golden State finally coming healthy and getting Poole back and all that. So I have Gary much lower. That's me.
Yeah.
So would you Gary Payton or Damian Lee as a punt?
Let's see what we haven't projected for. That's a good one. I did my whole thing today. I can let the math answer that question. I have, for Damian Lee, I have for 23 minutes and 17 3/4 fantasy points. For Payton, I have for 13 minutes and 12 fantasy points. So just to give you an idea, I have Lee massively better than Gary Payton this second. So.
Well,
there's again, I have no issue with Gary Payton the second as I think we locked. I think we locked everybody. Oh no. Oh man.
Daniel Gafford returned, by the way.
Yeah. We spoke about frequently in chat, but we do have to realize that not everyone has the wisdom, the perspicacity, the good sense to be subscribers to FTN and therefore in our Discord. So we occasionally have to say things verbally. So Dan Gafford's in there and doing his thing. That's fine.
Well, I'll pull up some ownership here because we did have 4 of the 7 games locked.
Yeah, we
really haven't talked much about Spurs and Oklahoma City. And Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, obviously the hot topic there with him getting the start at the 5. So I believe he's 3-2 on DraftKings. Oh, he's the flat min.
He's
3,000 and 1.85 on Superdraft. So Eddie, what kind of priority is JRE for you, if anything?
I think it'll be over-owned. I don't think I'd play any.
Okay.
Like, he's not super productive player. You know what? You ready for a challenge here? Zach Graham, you give me a number and I'll say over-under on his DraftKings points per minute so far in his career.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Put one on the board here? Go ahead, because it can't be fucking good.
Yeah. Let me get the board.
Right. Okay. I believe, by the way, I've buried the lead. We're after lock. I can say this. I got rolled on the board last show. We did a show on Wednesday, and I am told I got 3-0'd. But let's do a quick board review, and let's put some shit on the board.
Oh yeah, you did get 3-0'd.
I got 3-0'd.
Let's talk JRE here. Career, or not career, just for this year, right? Points per minute. That is his career.
Either one. I'll let you choose. Go
ahead. Give me 0.79.
Less. I don't think you're even getting to a 7. I think. Oh, am I looking? Let's go. What is it? I gotta spell this right. It's Robinson-Earl, right? That's with a.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I know I'm not on the board, but I'm gonna side with Eddie here. I think it's less than 0.79.
My Robinson-Earl DraftKings. Oh, you were so close. 0.63. Just to give you a bit of the context here, frequently against backups and bench units and in blowouts and stuff. So there's that, and then there's how many minutes you project him for. They have all the centers are healthy there, right? Like I'm not missing something. They've got
Roby's down in the G League.
But okay, so Roby is down in the 2. That's relevant, but they still
he hasn't been playing anyways.
Yeah, but they still have Favors, Muscala present at least, and they occasionally you see some Basley at the 5, but that's pretty rare. But Favors and Muscala are also going to get time. So I had JRE projected for what I think was very reasonable 19 minutes and 16 and a quarter fantasy points, which was a little generous of me, frankly, given his rates there. It's minimum. So I guess the reason I say that I would probably play none is I think people see starting and just lose their shit, and I think he's more owned than he should be. And at that point, there's lots of other really good value. And I think he's center only if I was playing on DK. And for all those reasons, I probably just wouldn't get to it. I'd look at it and be like, is this dude really going to throw up like a 30 burger here? So I think that's where I would end up landing there. Would sort of be my gut. The answer is he a good play? He's a fine play. He's probably going to play in the high teens, might crack low 20s. Probably going to score in the mid-teens, might crack high teens or 20 and 3K. He's very in that Dean Wade block of he's a guy. He's really cheap. He's probably not going to completely crap himself. I'm not gaga about, the matchup, but
sure.
I think that's where I would land on JRE.
I'd rather play KJ Martin over him by a pretty significant amount.
Oh God, yes, yeah. I would have KJ Martin, for example, for all right. Those $400 would be worth 6.5 fantasy points from here, something close to that. So he's fine.
So what about guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going into a tough matchup against that Murray White backcourt? Same kind of thing with Josh Giddey, whose price is coming up to a more acceptable level at this point.
Your boy coming true. I really think that one of the reasons you were so ahead of you've seen more Josh Giddey than I have. I've had to get a real job the last couple of years. You're watching like Venezuelan handball and Australian basketball and shit, and so you're just like, no, this guy's gonna be good. I'm like, hey, he doesn't look good so far, but yeah, he's really good.
Yeah,
like the days of free whatever Josh Giddey have apparently passed us by.
Yeah, well, then you've also got speaking of guys that are too cheap, Lou Dort's back 4-6. I like that play a lot as well. So how are you attacking Thunder, Steph?
I'm honestly not really attacking the Thunder. I just like if I'm playing one lineup, I don't think it's a single Thunder makes my one single entry lineup. If I'm playing multiple lineups, I want some Josh Giddey exposure. I'm with Eddie. I would probably lean closer to 0% of Jeremiah Robinson Earl than trying to get over the field. I'm not a huge fan of this specific slate. I don't love getting to Shai in this matchup. There's obviously a ceiling with Shai, any given slate. I just don't love it particularly. I don't think the Spurs aren't like a great defensive team, and I don't particularly want to focus on individual one-on-one matchups because the current NBA doesn't really work that way anymore. There's so much people switch off screens right away, and it's not that important. But he'll likely see Deontay for whenever possible, right? And at his price tag on this specific slate, if I'm going to take a stand, I'll probably take the stand on I'll be under on Shai. And there's really no one I love on this OKC side. I would say Josh Giddey would be my favorite. On the San Antonio side, I have no faith in Keldon Johnson's minutes. I don't know why, because whenever I don't play him, he's going to play 35, 36 minutes. Whenever I'm over the field on him, he plays 18 minutes and Pop hates him. So I've lost all confidence in myself projecting Keldon Johnson. That said, I kind of like Keldon Johnson tonight. He's probably my favorite Spur dollar for dollar, but I don't say that confidently.
Eddie, similar respect for this vaunted Spurs defense, or you have more interest in Oklahoma City guys?
It's interesting that you say vaunted because the connotation I get from the tone of your voice is undeservedly so. No, they're really good. So I would say I have little interest in this team as a whole. When I look at how they rank out, the only one who ranks as reasonably positive for me is Josh Giddey. And at this point, again, sort of several of those other 6-2 plays, I would probably rather get to KPJ. I would probably rather run some of these plays. Lou Dort, I have for 30 minutes. Maybe sneaks in a little above that. But usage on this team has been difficult to find, and I think will continue to be. And I don't think he's 100%. If he was 100%, I'd have a lot of interest in Lou Dort. We saw alpha male Lou Dort quite a bit. That's not something we're seeing as much now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the back-to-back, I'm 99% sure, up to 8,600. So largely a pass for me. Nothing wrong with playing. You can play Jeremiah Robinson Earl. If you looked at anyone's projections, they're going to say high teens in minutes, mid to even low teens in fantasy points. Jakob Poeltl isn't there, so that makes his day just a very real degree relevantly easier. I just suspect he gets owned into the 20s or low 30s, and that's probably a little more than I would like to get to there. But I think you end up seeing a three-way center split minutes between Favors, Robinson Earl, and Muscala. So for OKC, I don't think a team I would have a terrible amount of interest in targeting. The Spurs, I like marginally more. They're all priced really well. I mean, DeJounte Murray has been, rapidly evolving into the player that many people, including both you and I, have always assumed that he could become. I'm a big fan, so are you. That's outstanding, but now he costs $9,100. Dude has triple-double potential. The matchup is great. He's going to be 5% owned. I'm fine getting some shares of DeJounte Murray, but he projects for 42, 43 fantasy points. That doesn't, make you go crazy for $9,000. Keldon is, getting his 30 minutes, projects for about 25 fantasy points. That doesn't make your socks roll up and down at 5,500 or whatever his price is there. Drew Eubanks, as game 1 I didn't get exactly right. Game 2 I did get exactly right. I said 22 for Eubanks, 26 for Thad. We got that on the nose last game. That makes them both not incredibly appealing. They were 3K flat and 4-1, and people went nuts, and they were good plays. Now they're 4-4 and 5-7, something like that. So they're really expensive now. So yeah, largely a pass game for me. I'm fine getting to the GPP guys. And Derek White, has been really good this year. Gets low towards even the mid 30s in minutes, 6,300. You can get there. I'd probably rather play some of the several guys I mentioned at that price point. So.
If you look at Superdraft, Eddie, you get Thad Young at 2x. I kind of like him in tournaments over there.
Yeah, that's really strong. 2x versus 5.7K. It is obviously a pretty clear differential. So that feels pretty good.
And I don't know if I was hearing things or not, but I think you referenced a back-to-back for OKC. I believe this is an island game.
I thought they were on a back-to-back. If I'm mistaken, then I am mistaken. I'll assume.
I think actually haven't played since Thursday night at LA in that one of the many meltdowns that the Lakers have had this year.
To the Thunder.
Yeah.
Lakers meltdowns to the Thunder.
Multiple. Yeah.
They were up 20 and up 18 or whatever in their 2 games against the Thunder and lost both games. I believe those are the only Thunder wins, correct? I think the Thunders are 2-X, having beaten the Lakers twice.
You are correct.
Yeah.
And they don't.
But I appreciate you correcting me. I don't see it. I don't know why I thought the Thunder played last night. So that is an island game. They actually are in a massive schedule lull. They played Thursday and play Wednesday. So maybe a game got pulled or something. Somehow in my internal notes, I got the idea that they were because they literally have not played in 3 days and will not play for 3 days. So no, they're remarkably fresh and sprightly.
By the way, that Wednesday slate where they play again, 13 games. So we can all prep for that, I guess, starting tonight probably. So
I need a day off. Okay. Yeah.
Quick 2v2 here. Jeremiah Robinson Earl and LaMelo Ball, or SGA and KJ Martin. I was about to say Cody Martin.
Say it again.
It was JRE and LaMelo, or SGA and KJ Martin.
I would play SGA and KJ Martin.
I think so too, yeah.
What was the placeholder? Hold on, I got to make sure I didn't lose it. My placeholder as of all right, so my placeholder as of an hour and a half ago, and I didn't touch it, was Derrick Rose, Joe Ingles, Paul George, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nick Richards, Alec Burks, Karis LeVert, and Ivica Zubac. But again, he's sitting there in utility, I would think. So that was the placeholder. Quick question. Sure. Founded it. Nothing too crazy. Probably pretty chalky, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Want to talk some ownership here?
Oh, can we?
Well, I've got it pulled up, and number one is up there.
Number one is up there as far as massively. It's gonna be Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
I don't know the rest of it. Number one is
Rose,
Derrick Rose. After that, I'll be sitting here for a while. Number one's Derrick Rose. Number two, probably it's gonna be either Bobby or Karras. There's no way it's Giannis at that point. So yeah, I would go D Rose number 150. I don't know, big number, 59.
D Rose number 163.
Yeah, that's probably a little high, but it's really not bad. Like, I'm a pretty big fan of D Rose in the spot. Once you find out, like, it's gonna be on the harder side to fail, but that's a big goddamn number. Next, I'll try Karras.
Karras number 3. You had it originally. Bobby Portis.
Bobby Portis.
Yeah,
nailed it. I expect a lot of these guys to land in and around the 30s. So I'll say he got into the 40s. 42.
45.5 for Bobby.
I think I like that. I think he should be a little bit higher. I have him projected basically even with Derrick Rose, so that's a good parallel point there. That at basically at the same price, Portis is $200 cheaper. I think you got 45 ownership as opposed to 63. So all our nice.
And Karras LeVert was third.
Yeah, Karras LeVert. 36.
37 on the nose.
That's lower than I thought, by the way. When I saw that number, I was like, oh, I thought he was going to be in the 40s.
Yeah.
I guess even the late news shouldn't have affected him a lot. Okay, who else did I expect to be well on? You're going to get 4 games. No. Going on the same game. TJ McConnell will be up here somewhere. Sure, I'll say TJ McConnell. I think he's lower, but he'll be up here.
Yeah, Timothy John number 5.
Giannis. Sorry, I skipped the obvious one. Yeah, the whole day I said I thought he would be like high 30s. So high 30s, 36.
Yeah, Giannis 33.
Slow start for the Bucks, by the way. I don't know if you see the score of that game.
I have not. 9-0 score in their game.
They have
2 minutes in.
2 minutes in, 9-0. It's that
9-0. Who?
Wizards.
Washington.
It's that vaunted Wizards defense.
I blame Drew.
Drew Holiday.
By the way, he's going to have no fucking ownership. Unrelated story. I can't wait to all right, so Giannis, TJ, you said.
Yes.
The Jazz. No, I mean the Donovan Mitchell price on DK was really nutty. So the highest on Jazz is. Give me a team by team would be easier. I don't know. I'm getting a headache. The Ingles would be the highest owned Jazz player.
You are correct. Joe Ingles comes in 8th, 15.8%.
That's a lot.
So we also got in between that. Jarrett Allen came in right behind McConnell. TJ 29%, Jarrett Allen 28%, Miles Turner 18%, then Joe Ingles at 15.8%. Your boy Alec Burks after that, Eddie, 12%. Followed by Harrison Barnes.
So good.
And then you're in single digits. Donovan Mitchell 9, Drew Holiday 9, Colin Sexton and Darius Garland both sitting at 8, 7.5 KCP.
Sexton's off to a very nice start, by the way.
Good, is he?
4 minutes in, 6 points, 2 assists, and a rebound. You like that if you have Colin Sexton.
Absolutely. A couple other notables. Julius Randle 7, Daniel Gafford 6.5. Emmanuel Quickly 5.5, Bradley Beal 5%, Evan Mobley 4.5, Davion Mitchell 4. That's about it. Dean Wade 1.9. Yep, total of 478%, and I do see 0.14% of people that played themselves with Mike Conley. So we, as always, appreciate those people. Also, 0.14% of people playing Marvin Bagley.
Bagels.
Interesting.
The old Sunday ownership. You got to love it.
Perhaps I'd like a bagel with my coffee. Very nice.
All right. Well, anything else, Jen? We do have at least one thing to do before we go, and that was UNC asking us our favorite Pokemon.
This is easy. Cloyster. Look at a picture. That's very easy. Clearly Cloyster. That's with a Y.
Yeah.
Cloyster. Looks like an oyster. Has nothing to do with a cloister as in a group of religious individuals. But Cloyster, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I can't beat that. My answer is Zapdos, though, as we see a nice little Cloyster GIF pop up in the Discord.
That's not the most inappropriate Cloyster GIF. Pay special attention to that spike on the top. That's all I'm saying.
I guess is this like favorite Pokemon like to like battle with, or is this like favorite just overall Pokemon, like for like the actual like game, right? Like because like I was gonna say Charizard's like the top one, right? It's not gonna be Charizard. I don't know if you remember Articuno though. He was kind of like
Articuno. He just said Zapdos. Of course he remembers Articuno.
He was kind of a code where you can kind of put like surf, you can put fly, and kind of get all of them just done.
So you're like a power gamer. Like in the card game, I was hydro pumping the shit out of my Blastoise. Like, let's not get it twisted. You like mega evolve that fucker into a town. Like that guy was the real shit. I'm looking to see if the picture of Cloyster in the Pokemon Go app is more inappropriate. I'm kind of hoping. This is I don't know if we're come on, camera, get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, can you tap it? What's the animation for Cloyster on the game?
Let me turn the It's gets a little sensitive. That's all it was. Yeah, there's legendary birds. I guess I'll be Moltres. I'll be Hot Fire of the three of us. It's the most useless one in both the card game and the whatever. So I resent that very much.
And producer Thomas chiming in our Slack chat with his input on the Cloyster discussion there.
Oh, he's a good man and thorough.
Well, a solid Sunday, gentlemen.
Yeah,
I think we got through most of the questions and obviously most of the games with 4 of the 7 locked here. And make sure in about an hour that you tune into the NFL stream, because obviously those guys are crushing showdowns every week and on Sunday nights as well, not just Monday and Thursday night football. So I don't know who's on tonight, but anytime you're getting that NFL team, it's a big plus if you are subscribed to the NFL package here at FTN. Steph, when's the next time we're going to see you, man? It's been too long. I know we talked about it at the top, but we can't go another month without doing a show.
I know. I'm kind of pulling an Eddie here. I have my Eddie hat where I'm going to be a bit of a rover, and I'll crash whenever we need like a fill-in. If someone's like a late scratch, right? I'll probably be like that late scratch, that replacement at minimum price. I'll see 12 minutes, and then I'll put my hamstring, and that'll be it. But I'll at least try.
You would never be minimum price, Steph. Not in my game, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll boot Joe off a couple of shows coming up and bring you in, because it's always better that way.
Definitely.
What about you, Eddie? Are we
get Conrad out of there?
Are we going to get to see
Conrad on camera?
Are we going to get to see the wild Eddie appears between now and Wednesday, or we just we think we're going to we just never know?
You can't know. It's where you wander around all the time and there's nothing but the occasional Caterpie, and then sometimes you're lucky enough and just the Cloyster shows up. So.
Or a legendary Eddie. So I guess that'll do it for us here at FTN. Good luck, everybody. Obviously, we'll be in the Discord leading all the way up to that last game at 9 Eastern, Charlotte and the Clippers. So for Stefano, for Eddie, for Thomas, the producer extraordinaire behind the glass, I'm Zach. And as always, let's get these beats. Good night.
Love it.